Where's that? Hello. Hi, it's John Firth, and I'm here with my friends Alan Byrne and JoAnn Thomas for the beginning of our fall season of First and Friends. And I want to thank you, dear participants, for joining us on this very interesting topic, which is ageism in the workplace. We did a similar broadcast about a year ago, and we wanted to update it with what's going on in 2024. And there's a lot going on. I think we've seen it on the national stage with certain political personalities that are the oldest that we've ever had. And there's been interesting ageism going on there. But we're really concerned about the workplace. And more importantly, we're interested in the phenomenon we're seeing, which is this fast turnaround in jobs. A lot of people, both Alan and JoAnn, work for an outplacement firm, and they've seen a huge uptick in people passing through, if you will. So a lot of people are leaving their jobs, being asked to leave, not just voluntarily. In fact, most of it isn't voluntary. And they're going into this nomad's land of finding their next gig, their next job, their next career, whatever. And they have spent a lot of time helping these individuals. So we're going to draw on that expertise as well. But I'm going to ask JoAnn to start, introduce herself, and say a little bit about what she's seeing in outplacement in the world of employment and unemployment. And then we'll go to Alan.
Thanks, John. Hi, my name's JoAnn Thomas, and I am a career transition, career strategist, helping people find their next roles, whether or not they've been laid off or they're just looking for a new opportunity in their career. And I am thoroughly enjoying working with people. And as far as what I am seeing in the job market is obviously we're still continuing to see large layoffs. I'm not seeing an end in sight. In fact, our organization is already planning to hire 60 additional consultants to help the incoming number of people who have lost their jobs recently. And I work with a wide range of age groups as well as different types of roles people are seeking.
Mm-hmm. And are you finding the turnaround in terms of the period between which they show up at the outplacement service and when they leave? Is it getting shorter? Is it getting longer? Are people finding the jobs faster or slower? What would you say?
You know, for the most part, I think it is a long process. Companies are requiring applicants to go through a crazy number of rounds of interviews. And even within each round, there's multiple people per round. So applicants are talking to a lot of people within an organization before they choose somebody. And so it is taking longer. People are finding jobs, but it's probably easily beyond 3. Well, it's obviously beyond 4 months, I would even say. And we have the capability of checking back with people who have come through our program in the last year. And I am shocked to see a number of people that came through our doors, let's just say in October of last year, and they're still looking. So that's a long time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in terms of what it means for executives over 50. But Alan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're seeing that may be the same or different?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alan Byrne. I was on the original show with John and JoAnn over a year ago. I am somebody who was impacted as an over 50 when I lost my job and decided to venture out on my own. And so now I'm working as a transition consultant at actually the same company as JoAnn. It's actually very educational, it's not easy work. We've got just so many people coming through the program all at once. But really what I'm seeing is the particular people that I'm going to say over 40 that are coming through that have lost their jobs and they can't connect the dots to why it was them. Like they're looking at, they're being told wasn't your performance. It wasn't the fact that, you didn't show up for work, or they're just like being told after 34 years reporting to the same place every day, hey, goodbye, today's your last day. And people, so we're not just getting them out of work, we're getting them psychologically a mess, and very concerning with how people are treated in companies, like where it's basically you don't matter. And that's scary. That's very scary for people. So we're not just we're doing work that we really shouldn't be doing, because we're trained HR professionals, but it takes that to a point. So, one of the things, and actually this just happened today. I was looking at LinkedIn this morning as I was having my coffee, and I noticed that one of my candidates who placed, he actually landed, and he took a job. He moved from Austin, Texas to Oregon, and he put up on there that he's looking for work. Mm-hmm. And I pinged him and I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, believe it or not, he said, they're going through cost cutting and they cut my role.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I'm like, and he's in his 40s. And I said, he's like, you know what? He said, I was going to call you, but can I call you in a half hour? And I said, I've got something going, but I will call you today. So here's somebody who's moved, and I know a lot about him based on the intimate times that we spent together. But, he pays child support. He's got a kid that's 15 years old, sports, school, the kind of cash outlay that goes with that. And that's just one example of the things that are happening. But
there's a lot of it. I'm hearing a lot of examples of people who actually move and then lose their job.
But this ageism thing, it's coming over the airwaves everywhere. People are picking it up, and everybody's beginning to experience it. And you experience it. I think it's lower than now 50. I think the number has dropped. Somebody said the other day that somebody quoted that if you're 45 and you get laid off, your career is over. You should just pick something else to do.
Yeah.
I hear that in tech, that there's like a lifespan in these corporations, and I think it's hitting around 35.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you continue, Alan, and then we're going to move to executive.
Well, on the flip side of it, it's funny, like a younger gentleman that I placed at a large corporation. I don't want to mention names, but he is moving for the job. But he was sort of disgusted that his whole package between base, bonus, and stock options was only going to be $354,000 for year one. And he was looking for something more in the fours. So he said, well, I'm going to take this job, until something else comes up. And that's what I hear a lot of the younger people saying. I need to do this because I got bills to pay. And then once I'm settled in the job, I'm going to get back on and I'm going to start looking. And I'm like, okay. And so it's like, we used to talk about loyalty. Now we don't talk about loyalty. Yeah. Now you're scared to talk about loyalty because you don't want anybody, you want to hire somebody, you don't want them to run because you're looking for somebody to like hang around for a couple of years.
Yeah, there's a distinct lack of empathy. In other words, nobody likes a situation that you've got a lot of managers and C-suite people who are more than happy to do the things to others that they absolutely would crumble under. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I say one of the biggest issues is the fact that really what most people who are doing the layoffs are concerned about is not having any legal repercussions. Well, we know the law is extremely emotionless. And so when you're going from a headspace of, I just want to get through this interview, toss them out as fast as possible so we don't have a lawsuit, that makes it for a particularly psychologically damaging experience for the recipient of that. But let's talk about our experiences as executives over 50. We've had about 7 or 8 people come through, all of whom have basically found their footing with maybe one exception. But it has been a long process in some cases. In some cases, it's been as simple as we've changed the mindset. I won't name names, but somebody who actually sued his company beforehand for discrimination because they were actively promoting women and minorities and not white, straight men. He won the case, but his headspace was he was having trouble getting second interviews, was that he was being impacted. People were finding out, because it's public knowledge, that they do a background check and found that he had sued the corporation. As soon as we change that mindset, that there's a different way of thinking about it, a different way of addressing the issue, he got a job within 2 months. So a lot of his mindset when you're over 50 And then we had one woman who had an offer after basically 6 months, great offer. She turned it down because it wasn't exactly what she wanted. Even though she was under financial pressure, she's now got her job of her life, of her dream. So we are getting hired. It's just that we really have to go in with the best feet forward. I mean, both feet, not just one. You gotta have your mindset clear and productive and positive. And then you also have to accept that it's going to, in some cases, be a lot of networking, a lot of work. But what are you seeing, Alan, coming out of executives over 50?
Well, first off, when I'm first connected with somebody like that, they're sort of in a withdrawn place. They're thinking, well, maybe it is time for me. Somebody said maybe you should retire, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I should. And I'm like, well, if that's what you choose to do, but I said, if you were to work, what do you want to do? And we talk about that, and I'm like, well, why don't we spend some time delving into that and get you rolling on trying to find that kind of a job.
Yeah.
And it does take longer, for some people, 6-8 months, depending on their package that they have. Sometimes they leave me, and then after a period of time, and then later on they'll call me and say, I just landed a job. But the bigger jobs that I'm finding are going to the younger people in their like late 30s, early 40s. And people over 50 are being offered roles, but they're taking large pay cuts, and they're taking steps down from their titles. And they're at a point where it's like, hey, that's okay. I'm fine. I just want to work 5 more years. I just want to pay my mortgage, and my wife and I together will make it. The kids are out of school, so we're over that. So, but it's just the fact that they have to actually sit in their homes at nighttime and figure out between themselves, since we've been dealt this, how do we fix the issue? Because there's nobody else going to help us.
Yeah, which is why they come to us at Executives Over 50, because it's great to have a group of peers who are going through that. This is a group of peers, and then people like the 3 of us who counsel them, who each bring a special skill set. In your case, you have an incredible ability to really understand what somebody's going through at a very deep level. We sit there and we help people, and we are really turning out to be the place to come when you just don't know what to do, or you've locked yourself into something where you go, but that's not what I want. It's not working, because it can work. It's just that you got to do it right.
Well, and I think, John, I think we come from a generation that we were kind of taught to grin and bear it.
A little bit. Oh, yeah.
And, don't fight back too much, because you don't want to ruffle things up. Yep. You want to keep that job. And, now it's like, it's not just grin and bear it. It's like, goodbye. Yeah. People say the other people were offered a transfer. I wasn't even offered to transfer.
Right.
And it's like, and I said, well, you need to go back and you need to question that. And you want a firm answer from them on why not 10 people were laid off, 9 were offered an opportunity to move, and you were not. You were singled out. So it is time to sit. It's time to fight back. It's time to take over the role of being the interviewer, and you get to interview the person that's like, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah. Well, now the 3 of us went through somewhat similar situations where we went through some turbulence when we were sort of, set free, when we were left our positions. Well, let's talk for a second about our personal journeys. Now, JoAnn, both you and Alan about a year ago started. Actually, Alan and I have been working together for 3 or 4 years, and we've known each other for a long time, although we've never met in person. Is that both of you went through recently in the last 2 years difficult times, and you've reemerged as people over 50, late 50s, early 60s, that have actually pulled it together and are, I would say, very happy compared to when I first met you both. So, JoAnn, tell us a little bit about your journey. This is all to prove that it can work. It can work itself out, even if you're in your 50s or 60s.
Exactly. I went through a layoff, just like it seems like rite of passage for people in their 50s. So I went through a layoff, was doing contract work on my own and enjoying it. And then last year I was diagnosed with cervical cancer and had to go through 6 rounds of chemo and all the fun that goes with that. And during that time, I was in a networking group, and Alan was one of the members. And he actually was the one who referred me into the career transition company. And then he later joined, which has been fun. But, LHH provided flexible hours, and, the week after chemo is when all the horrible symptoms kick in. And so I was able to lighten my load during those periods of time and, increase them when I was starting to feel better. And Alan actually, that's how we actually became better friends, is he helped me through the journey because he also went through it over 5 years ago. So he was a lifesaver and just a great support during that time. So that was what helped me. And fortunately, it's actually a role that I relish and enjoy helping people. And without going through the hard work of being a HR executive. So I kind of feel like I found my home and that I am helping people, and that makes me feel good, especially when, people have light bulb moments or they start getting it. And like Alan said, we're counseling people because it really is a hit on the ego when you got let go and you don't know the reason why, and you've done outstanding work, and your last review was, sterling. And so people it doesn't make sense to them. They just got let go. And, I see the faces that come across my desk, and a large portion of them are 50 and older and 40 and older. And just yesterday, I had a 50-year-old man talk about ageism. And, he still had a younger look to him, but well aware that it was going to be harder for him to find his next role. And I think that's sad. But my whole goal is to encourage people, build up their self-confidence again so that they can go back into, this thing called interviewing and be successful at it.
Yeah. And there are, I think, a couple of things, and we've seen this from our members of the Executives Over 50 group, is that I should be turning my cell phone off, is that a lot of it is in our heads. And that you need somebody like us or some external coach or group or something to actually make it clear that a lot of it is in your head. I mean, we're three witnesses to the fact that in some cases, I'm much happier. I know in many cases, almost all of them, I'm much happier than I was in corporate, making less money. But I also hit a stage in my career at 53, 54, where I wasn't really interested in pulling out all the stops all the time. And I had some money in the bank. And so I knew it wasn't going to be a financial disaster if I took less money. And that allowed me to do truly what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, with the people I wanted to do it with. So there are trade-offs, but I'm absolutely much happier now than I was even like 5 or 6 years ago. So there is a place for us. As far as what we've learned is it's really dialing up the wisdom and experience that we've gathered. The ability to be more efficient with our time because we know how to do things better. And we're also good at coaching because we've all been in managerial positions. All of that conspires to make us actually very valuable assets. I think that's the thing that we're learning, Executives Over 50. It's one thing to be told that. It's another thing to know it, but it's a completely different thing to actually live the fact that you are a valuable asset to many, many people and many, many corporations. And that you're not, I look at the mirror, I'm looking at myself now and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm 30 and I look like I'm 65, which is what I am. But Alan, we've talked about this a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how you see some of the turnarounds and mindsets for people over 50.
Sometimes I have to go toe to toe with my candidates to get them to wake up. And I'm like, you got to look in the mirror every day and you need to smile at yourself. And you need to, whatever you need to do you need to start telling yourself that you can do this and you can land this job. And when they do, they've got such a look on their face. They're like, oh my God, I cannot believe they actually made me an offer. And it's like, well, yeah, well, what did you expect? Of course they're going to make you an offer. We all knew that. But I think that the thing that's disturbing to me is that I see people over 50, and what they do is, we teach them how to work their network. And so they go to past coworkers or they go to friends that have openings at their companies. And so they get connected, and the friend is like, hey, give me your resume and I'll submit you as an employer referral. Well, we all know that an employer referral is one of the best hires you can make. And you usually jump to the front of the line when it is an employee referral. But I just find it so interesting now that when people are of a certain age and they do get referred by somebody that they know at the company, they're still not getting a job. And they're just coming out of it like everything went fine in the interviews. And I'm like, well, I said, if you could go into that company in 6 months and walk around and see who they hired, I can guarantee you they were not over 50.
Yeah.
And,
There's one. Yeah.
It's disturbing, but it's everything that they can throw at us. We can take it on, and that's the biggest build, that I've learned after 38 years in human resources, and I'm retired now, but I'm still doing this part-time work to keep, it keeps me in the game, and I feel like I'm helping people, and we have enjoyable conversations, and you learn a lot about their lives and their kids and grandkids and different things like that. And this is the emerging world that we're walking into, and I don't see what can be invented to change it.
Well, I think, invented, maybe not. Certainly technology doesn't help. All these resume job postings, you can forget, throw out the window, especially if you're over 50. Don't even bother with that. And don't expect somebody's just going to discover you on LinkedIn. You have to actively do more. In fact, I would say we have to use our skill sets and our experience and our understanding of people, our emotional, our EQ, to be able to realize what we have to do. So you talk about getting an employee referral. Well, one referral into a company means nothing. You actually have to wind your way through the organization, depending on the role. So one of our clients, she had an introduction through a CEO. Well, I don't care what anybody says. Just because you have an introduction through the CEO doesn't mean diddly squat. You've got to spread out your wings. For one, you're not probably going to be his direct report or her direct report, and you may be low in the organization. She kept asking for the next step. Who do I talk to next? So you have to be proactive. You have to realize you have to spread your wings throughout an organization, depending on the role, to get hired. And sometimes if you're over 50, you have to actually do a lot of the legwork. Like, who do I talk to? And you have to really understand what they're telling you too, which we're much better at than, say, a 40-year-old, because we know much more. We can pick up on subtleties and so forth. We know how to read situations much better. But JoAnn, tell us a little bit about the process. What are sort of the steps in the process for somebody over 50? We've talked a little bit about getting their heads screwed on straight. And we've talked a little bit about having to wind their way through an organization. But what does the process look like from beginning to end, sort of in short form?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to optimize your resume. And most people don't like to hear this, but you have to tailor your resume to every single job description. And, the point is to help the recruiter know that you are qualified for the job, make it easy for them.
Are people going through recruiters? How much are people going through recruiters these days, especially
well, unless you're hiring
external, you're referring to internal as well, I guess. Recruiters.
Well, the way recruiters work is it's like Jonathan. He's a retained search. So he has a company he's working for, basically, or they gave him this job opportunity to fill. And so he goes out and looks for the people. Unless you're paying a headhunter to look for a job for you, nobody's looking nobody else is helping you. That's not the way recruiters work these days.
Right.
So yes, you can, have relationships with recruiters. And if that particular position comes up that you're suited for, then yes, of course, they're going to reach out to you. So, optimizing your resume is key.
LinkedIn profile too. LinkedIn profile.
LinkedIn profile. I just had a lady who said whatever suggestion I had made to her about her profile, 4 of the FANG companies reached out to her. So she's interviewing with TikTok, Netflix, all, those types of companies. So having a good LinkedIn is essential. You need to network. Just applying for a job doesn't work anymore. I kind of blame it on the easy apply that LinkedIn and Indeed have. You can put up one generic resume and then just hit apply all day long. But the thing is, you're just junking up a recruiter's inbox, and it's taking them longer to filter through all these people that aren't qualified to only find 1 or 2 that they're actually interested in talking to. So that means that people now, in order to be seen, need to be networking, need to get referred into these companies. And like you said before, it's no guarantee that they'll get the job, but maybe they'll get that first interview, which then the rest is up to them. Mm-hmm. And, I recommend to people to, in their network, try and have as many senior leaders as possible in their network, because
one would hope if you're 55 or 60, you've got those connections because you've risen up in an organization.
Exactly. And those referrals will be more impactful than, say, a colleague, but a colleague is better than nothing. So again, you need to build kind of your political network at the same time.
Okay. And social, if you think of it as social too, it should also, your social network can yield a lot of things. I had an outplacement, I tell the story all the time. I was in outplacement about 20 years ago, and she said, she was a nice old woman, not old, but she was of 70, she called herself an old woman, 70 years old, very nice, very smart, knew what she was talking about. And she said, and we were talking about networking and how I was being very choosy because, certain levels and all those. She said, you don't know who people know. You don't. She said, if you have something that I think is worthy to present to Wendy Murdoch, and I thought she would respond well, I'd make the introduction immediately because she was a career counselor at Yale, and Wendy Murdoch was one of her counselees, and she will make resume. Now, I had nothing going on for her, so I never pulled that one. But that just said to me, you don't know who people will know.
Right.
Until you actually make the effort to say, even if it's a social connection, somebody in the apartment building where I live, you never know. In fact, my project at SBA came from a neighbor. So your social networks can be very valuable. The other thing I would add is the LinkedIn work you do. You really have to put yourself out there in LinkedIn. If you're looking for a job, you have to post articles. You have to write about yourself. You have to write things that a recruiter can go to your LinkedIn profile, not just read the profile, but see, oh, fascinating post. Wow, this person really understands this topic. It so happens we're looking for someone who knows this area of expertise. It's really, it's presenting yourself in a 360-degree way. And, again, I get a lot of clients now because they've looked at my profile on LinkedIn and said I had, it credentializes me. And that's worth a lot, but it's also tons of work.
The other thing with networking is, when you're talking to somebody and, the conversation does come around that you're looking for employment, that person may not be able to help you, but you're also looking for introductions because you can be introduced to somebody you haven't met yet. They can help you, or maybe somebody in their network. But you need to spread your
your tentacles, all this, your fingers. Yeah, it's. But again, I'm going to hope that if you're in your 50s or 60s, you've learned how to do that. That it almost becomes such, and you don't have in some cases, and the younger folk, they're a little embarrassed. It's like,
JoAnn, what is actually happening with some of these people that have worked at a company for 20 years is their hope was they were going to retire for that company, and they really haven't built their social political network, and they come out and they have 50 connections on LinkedIn, again, because they didn't think this was going to happen to them. And I think one of the best things you can do is, start building your network and building relationships in the company you're currently in, because again, they may be able to help you out in the future, but you really have to build a network in this market.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When I was in media and entertainment at Sony, and then at Discovery, the CFO for the international division, where I was head of strategy, she was always on the phone she was constantly networking. Never had a problem getting a job when she got laid off. And in media entertainment, you do not have, company people. I mean, that's a lot of movement. And she, oh my God, with recruiters, with friends, constantly networking, always in the back of her mind that, I may need this network. And so there are people in corporations that do that. But, and certainly as you get more senior, you realize, you are paid partially for your network. But you're right. There's a lot of shock that comes with this. Alan, let's talk a little bit about the fact that the three of us actually made ourselves independent. We didn't actually get jobs when we left. Tell us about that transition, because we're finding more and more we have to help our clients at least think about going independent as the only other solution for whatever reason.
Well, I decided that I was going to find a way to take my HR background, and majority of it is in private equity, merger acquisition, and how could I sell myself as an individual that could go out and work with companies that needed some turning around and needed to kind of really get their HR department, get their act together. And so I started to promote myself, started talking to people in the private equity world. People were like, I want to talk to you now. And I wasn't expecting that. And it just started to roll. And I was starting to make more money than I made when I was working. So I just had to cover my own taxes. But it just rolled that way because I opened my mouth and said something. I redid my...
Which you're very good at, Alan.
I opened my mouth and, went to LinkedIn, made some changes, talked to some friends that I know that are in recruitment, got their opinions, and it just, and I just started talking to people, and it just started to work. And I had people that were talking to people about me, and, that was all great and fine. And then of course what happened was somebody that I used to work for was going to start running a company and merging two companies together. And he was going to be the CFO. And he called me and he said, will you come be my VP of HR? And I said, no. And he said, why? And I said, well, I'll come and be your consultant, and I'll, come for 6 months and we'll see how it goes. And so for 6 months I was a consultant, and he was paying me more than, than he wanted to pay somebody. But the CEO really liked me, and I came in and I started getting the work done to merge two companies together that were on two different coasts. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't an easy thing to do because they were competitors. So okay, this is not going to be fun. But I said, I'm going to make it fun. So that's what I chose to do. And it was not long after that I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I kept working. I worked through my whole, process going through that. And by the end of it, the company was being sold. And that's, that COVID hit.
Right.
And I decided I was going to take my package and I was going to go home and take care of myself. And so I did that. And I, once COVID passed, I put my flag out there again. And that's when I made the determination that I really, really didn't want to do it anymore. That I wanted to do something that I really loved, and only because I got to do it. I get to do this. Right. And so I hung up the HR flag, and, eventually here I am, doing this transition consulting, and it's been about a year and a half. But
Yeah.
they're pleased with me. I'm pleased with them because they leave me alone.
Which is a lot of what we want.
It's nice to have a boss that sits somewhere and, if they call you, it's like because they need something from you.
Right. And not to beat you over the head with something. Yeah.
Well, because they're looking for the experience. And it's
Right.
like, I mean, I know my boss is probably 30, 35 years old. He's raising little kids with his wife. And he doesn't have the in-depth experience like that JoAnn would have or that I would have. And he'll ask us questions on large calls when there's like 160 people and how are you doing this and how are you doing that? And, so if we can help, we do. So I think it's,
Yeah.
it gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. And I remember the transition, and this will be our last topic because we have about maybe 8 or 9 minutes left, is there was a stage of grief you went through. I remember there was first, whatever it is, denial, then anger and bargaining and so forth. And you went through those stages when basically you were saying goodbye to your old career way of doing things and you embraced. And there was a moment when the LHH thing came up and you could see suddenly a lot of the grief was over. That you had accepted what happened and you were going full force and your whole life has changed. I mean, you're a different person than you were a year and a half ago.
And I had to learn that I had really developed in my career, considering the person who called me about LHH was their worldwide chief financial officer. And I knew him from a transaction that I had done. And he said, I want you to come to work for us. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What do you mean? And he's like, no, I think you'd really enjoy this consulting thing. And, they ended up having me train myself because there wasn't anybody to train me. I would go to JoAnn 52 times a day. Like, what does this mean? And then suddenly I was up and going, and it's, it really works well. And what we're doing today as these transition consultants, I believe is really helping people to get their lives together and that they have people that they can depend on and call whenever they need, whatever they want to.
And I would say that about those who join executives over 50, when somebody gets a job, or in the case of one of our members who goes out and hangs, and she had been an entrepreneur beforehand, but she'd never been a consultant. And, she's definitely learning the hard way. I mean, being a consultant the way she is, marketing consultant, you are going to get yourself in politically dicey situations, but she's learning and she's staying the course. Again, one of the things I think that age teaches you is all processes that feel like a failure in the middle. It's how you get through them and how fast you get through them that is the determinant factor of how successful you are. But JoAnn, what about your grieving? Because you went through a stage of grief, although I wasn't really, I saw the end tail of it in terms of saying goodbye to your old life and then having cancer and then embracing a new life. Tell us a little bit about that transition that you went through.
I think I wanted to get out of HR.
Okay, so maybe there wasn't so much grief.
Well, no, it wasn't grief. I would say, if anything, it was just frustration because I went through the same thing candidates are going through right now, where they have the skills and experience, but I do feel like it's ageism that they are hiring younger people. Well, I can even see it in job descriptions. They'll ask for a master's and 5 years of experience for a director level. And a director level, you need more than 5 years of experience to really be effective. Yeah. And so there's that. So right there, that was telling me they want a recent grad and not somebody with a lot of experience. So, that part, I think I was more frustrated with and just had to kind of deal with that thought process. But joining networking groups, that helped me realize it wasn't me. And now that I'm working with all these people with transition services, I definitely know it wasn't me because everybody's experiencing this. And, HR is just getting harder and harder, in my opinion. There's so many expectations and so many things being thrown at them. COVID killed, that's the wrong word. COVID really damaged HR people. They're just
I think it damaged a lot of
are
people.
burnt out, like all other kind of what do you call it? Different occupations is what I'm trying to say. So I guess making a transition into career services was kind of scary, and I wasn't sure, what it was all about and how I could succeed in it. But what I'm finding is this is the pleasant part of HR. I mean, I'm dealing with people who are devastated from their job loss, but I really feel like I can help them. And
they
like,
want to be helped. And that's
exactly.
important. They want to be helped.
And like Alan said, there's nobody breathing down our necks, about, certain things that have to be handled in HR, or the changes that you have to, change management of things going on with the organization. And it's, one-on-one conversations with people. They're heartfelt, and I'm genuinely there for people and want to support them. So for me, I guess the transition, well, for all of us, has led to something much better than we had anticipated.
Yeah, as long as we keep our fears in check, our doubts, and the networking, the being with other people, not saying misery loves company, but to hear that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And that you can learn from the others is invaluable. I see that in all the groups I lead, whether it's CEOs or business owners, that they often say, wow, I didn't realize that they're all having problems. They're all as miserable or as upset as I am. There's a lot of stickiness with that, but there's also then the chance to realize that all that negative stuff really doesn't need to be. And if it is, just accept it, but move forward. And I think groups and networking absolutely helps you deal with that stuff in a way that brings you back on the court of action. So my final question to both of you is to say goodbye is, what do you see happening in the future? How is this going to change? We have a major election coming up that's going to be probably one of the most monumental moments in American history, regardless of which way it goes. But how do you see this a year from now, Alan, this situation?
Well, my biggest concern is we're going through a phase right now where I've never seen more layoffs happening than I'm seeing today. Mm-hmm. So that's very concerning to me. They're coming out, people are coming out in not just hundreds, thousands. And what I don't hear in the presidential election, political, but they're not talking about people losing their jobs and unemployment. They think this unemployment rate is low, and it's actually not, because a lot of the numbers are not in there that should be in there. And that's
like the amount of people who lose their job.
And people are talking about, like, look at this, we're only at 4.1. No, we're not. I wouldn't be surprised if we're like about 10 or 12. So do I think there's going to be changes? If there are, there'll be slow changes. Maybe into 26, you might start to see things, really start to turn around, and that there'll be jobs. I think there's going to be a lot more contracting jobs and project management jobs than just a regular job with, like that. So, and I think companies are going to get creative and be able to offer contractors some sort of benefits so that they stay longer, and yet they still don't have to pay them like an employee. Yeah. So I do think there'll be changes like that. Hopefully people will get creative that way.
Yeah. There's one issue, though, because I know from my days running the Association for Consulting Firms, which have always had lots of contractors because of the flexibility it offers, the IRS often showed up on their doorstep because of the limited amount. Once you go over a certain number of non-employees of contractors, you show up on somebody's radar screen. Now, I don't know if that's changed. This was 12 years ago, this one instance. I don't know if that's changed at all, but absolutely everybody benefits from contracting relationships, especially at our age. The firms have the flexibility. We have the opportunity to choose and to make the hours that we want. I mean, everybody really benefits. What about you, JoAnn? How do you see the future?
Well, I'm hopeful that once the election is over, and hopefully interest rates decline, that more companies will feel more confident to grow or take on new projects that they're working on, which I would hope would mean, there's more employment opportunities out there. The one thing I don't think is going to change is how horribly companies are treating job applicants. That is one thing I wish that would change, because it's going through a job process where people don't communicate with you on the status of your application, and ghosting, and people going through these 18 interviews and then not hearing anything back. I mean, it is, I cannot believe the rudeness and the disrespect that is
the
going on.
damage they can do to their brands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe it. And candidates say it. I'm never going to buy from that company again. So it does affect it. And I hope companies at some point recognize this, that it is okay to treat people respectfully. And the ATS systems do have an email feature that you can push a button and it will say, we are moving on with somebody else. And I like to tell companies that just tell candidates that they're not moving forward, because you know what? They just cross them off their list and move on.
And have at least some good memory, not a distasteful experience.
Yeah. And, the applicant moves on to the next company. Because when you do not give notification that you're not moving forward, those people still have hope.
Yep. Yeah.
And to drag it on for weeks and months, it's horrible.
Yeah. We had an example at Executives Over 50 where she declined the first job because it wasn't perfect, thinking that the other job that she really wanted was just around the corner. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't even down the hallway. It was like in another county. And she, and there were 3 or 4 months there of incredible anxiety on her part while she was preparing other things. You should I always say in these situations, the plan A and plan B is not enough. You got to have a C, D, E, and F. You got to have multiple things going on. You cannot rest on your laurels just because you think you have it all sewn up. There's nothing sewn up in the employment world when you're getting a job.
You have to have a pipeline.
You have to have a pipeline. And it's got to at least have 5 or 6 viable opportunities, not, pie in the sky sort of things.
Right.
Excellent. Well, thank you, guys. It's been, as always, very illuminating.
Thank you, John.
And we will probably be doing this at least annually. And just a plug for Executives Over 50, if those who are listening are over 50, even if they're not, and they find themselves in this situation where they're getting a little hopeless or they feel stuck, please talk to one of us. We have our email addresses. Alan, unfortunately, doesn't have us up there. But also you can go to the website, which is www.johnffirth.com, and you hit on the Executives Over 50 tab, and you can find out about us, and you can book a free consultation. So my call to action is, if you feel at all like you're overwhelmed or it's not happening, just give us a call. Set up a time and we'll talk. No commitment necessary. Maybe we can even tell you a few things that might make all the difference in the world. So thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks when we talk about reinventing yourself, a tangential conversation in a similar area. But it's a LinkedIn audio event, which means there'll be a lot of interaction, although you won't be able to see us, which in some cases may not be a bad thing. Anyways, bye-bye.